We have two guests who are joining us in the studio. One of them, both have been here before. The Honourable Geoffrey Ruku is the Member of Parliament for Mbeere North constituency. He is in the National Assembly. He's very many things. How many committees are you in the National Assembly, Mheshimiwa?
I'm in two committees.
Yes.
Most of the members are in two committees. Yes, it is very difficult to be
in more than two.
To serve, even if you are in more than two.
You wouldn't be useful.
Even serving one is a problem. Yes, so actually one is enough.
Which are those two committees?
I'm in Committee of Tourism and Wildlife, Departmental Committee, and also I'm in Select Committee of Delegated Registration.
Okay.
Yes.
Very important committees.
Yes.
He's here alongside Philip Kagucia, who is the Deputy Director for Asset Recovery at the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission. Good morning, Philip.
Morning.
Welcome back.
Thank you for having me back.
Hey, you went to recover assets. You left us here. Good to have you back.
Yes.
You're here, both of you, because we want to have this conversation. I mean, the last time Mheshimiwa Ruku was here, we talked about it. And this is the Anti-Corruption and Economic Crimes Amendment Bill that he is sponsoring in Parliament, and we want to discuss it, the merits, the demerits of it, and also to hear what the thoughts of the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission are on this. To welcome you to the show, City has the day's proverb. Every week City has a proverb from a different country. This week they are from the country called?
Kenya.
All right. Whose president is called?
Careful.
We're in Kenya, aren't we?
Yes, we're in Kenya.
Kenya. The president is called Dr. William Ruto.
Well done.
Okay,
Yes.
very good.
And the deputy, deputy president is called Geoffrey.
Regardez.
Careful, there's another Geoffrey next to you.
It's called the GRG.
Those are his
Riggy
names.
G.
Yes, exactly.
He's a truthful man. Sawa.
He is.
The proverb?
The proverb has nothing to do with someone being truthful or not. It has to do with the bracelet. Try this bracelet. If it fits you, wear it. But if it hurts you, throw it away, no matter how shiny.
Try this bracelet. If it fits you, wear it.
Yes.
If it doesn't,
Throw it away.
no matter how shiny,
Doesn't matter how shiny it is.
just throw it
Throw
away.
it away.
Philip,
Yes.
what's your interpretation of this proverb?
I think it's something I've heard also from reggae songs. They say, who the cap fits, let them wear it. Yes.
You sing that song?
Oh. On a Monday morning?
Yes.
No chance.
Mheshimiwa Ruku, what's your interpretation of it?
I'm very poor in some of these things. It talks of a shiny bracelet. I have a shiny one, so I don't know.
If it fits you, wear it. If it doesn't, throw it away, no matter how shiny.
I think more or less that whatever glitters is not always gold. Whatever you see looking nice, it may not be indeed nice or good for you. I don't know whether it makes sense or not. I don't know.
How about this interpretation, Mheshimiwa Ruku? Try this piece of legislation. If it works, keep it. If it doesn't, throw it away.
Yeah. Also, from that point of view, it fits very well because I have a report, of for the last 5 years, from 2018 to this year, on anti-corruption, ethics and anti-corruption report from 2018 to now, and it's about a brief on success rate of the prosecutions of corruption cases under Section 45 of Anti-Corruption and Economic Act 2003. This is a report done by a researcher, in my committee of delegated registration. And whatever the report is saying, it's not a very good for the Kenya taxpayers. Because the money we invest in anti-corruption authority and the success rate and the number of cases which are reported to EACC and the one which sees the light of the day, For instance, in 2018-2019, EACC, in its Ethics and Anti-Corruption Report of 2018-2019, reported that the Commission received and analyzed, processed 9,308 reports on corruption and unethical conduct during the year 2018-2019. Out of these 9,308, received only 3,482 were relevant to the Commission mandate, representing that 7%. Out of the 3,482 reports recommended for investigations, bribery constituted 39%. Embezzlement constituted 22%.
What?
Embezzlement.
Embezzlement, 42%.
22%. And abuse of office, 9%. Others included maladministration, penal code offences, and civil issues. Public procurement irregularities only constituted 9% of the report, which was relevant to the Commission's mandate.
Okay.
Now, by the end of the financial year, EACC and a total of 1,593 cases and investigations, out of which 218 were written to ethical breaches. I want you to see, we are talking about 9,000
Reported.
Then we go all the way down to 200, and we are going further down. 234 investigation files on corruption and in economic crimes, which were forwarded to DPP for review. Out of the file forwarded to the DPP for review, EACC recommended 78 for prosecution. You understand? We are now at 78.
Wait, 234 files forwarded to DPP.
Out of those,
Is
78.
it forwarding to DPP a recommendation for prosecution?
Yes.
And I think that is the factual point. If 238 have gone to the DPP, those have been recommended for prosecution.
No, yeah.
So what is the 78?
78 for EACC recommended 78 for prosecution. 13 for administrative action.
13 of the 78.
And of not those 78
Of the
234
Okay.
administrative action, and 3 for closure. Okay. In the same period, EACC reported for 414 pending cases on corruption, economic crimes, and unethical conduct pending before court. How many?
414.
Out of these cases, 14 involved willful failure to comply with the procurement procedures, 3 concerned engaging in the project without prior planning, and 2 concerned fraudulent payment from public revenues for the service not rendered. Probably just to summarize. During the same year that we are talking about 2018, 2019, and I have a report of every year from 2018 up to today, 78 cases of corruption, economic crime, and unethical conduct were finalized in court. Okay? There were 23 acquittals.
78 finalized. Out of this 78, 23 were acquittals.
Do you know what that means to have 23 acquittals, Ratif?
What does it mean?
It means these are 23. Probably it's not one person, it's several people.
There are at least 23 people.
At least, yes, minimum 23. It means that these people can go back to court to claim damages for being dragged in court over the years for things which were not true.
What are the reasons for the acquittals?
Because the case could not hold the water in court.
Is that the reason cases people are acquitted in court?
Is
that the only reason? It's not the only reason.
What I'm saying, Ratif, is members of parliament are given responsibility by the constitution to ensure we have laws which can stand the test of time in our court processes, in the justice administration processes. What we are saying is this section repealing has wasted Kenya's resources, Kenya's taxpayers for the last 20 years. It is high time we repeal this amendment, these sections of the law, so that we can align everything with the Constitution and other statutes of law like Procurement and Disposal, Public Procurement and Disposal Act, as well as other laws like Public Procurement Regulatory Authority, so that we may not be facing such high, we are talking of people dragging people in court processes for criminal offenses, which at the end of the day they will be acquitted, and then go back to the same court to claim damages. Today, I have one of the registrators in Parliament who want EACC to pay 300 million for unlawful dragging her in the court processes. Okay, and of course, once you have a criminal prosecution in court, you are not supposed to be abroad. You are supposed to be out of the job until you
for all that time.
For all that time. And mark you, the average years, I have the summary of every. The average years one prosecution takes is minimum 4 years.
Yeah, that sounds about right. So why don't you summarize your report? Because you say you have a report in summary. Can we have that report in summary?
I'm just, it's every year. Every year.
So this is a summary for that 2018.
Yes.
That's just 2018. For instance,
what's the latest one that you have?
On 2018-2019, there was only one conviction under section 45(2). Okay, only one.
So what happened to
from 9,302? What are you talking about?
Okay.
Yeah. So the question is, which we should ask ourselves, what is the problem here?
All right, so maybe we can do that and then ask the question in terms of what has been happening then. Philip,
and something which I'm finding funny.
Maybe because I think we can ask the question now in terms of what has been happening with the investigation and prosecution of cases when it does come to the EACC in the last, give it 5 years, Philip.
And I think 5 years is a fantastic benchmark. So the summary that we've been given by the Honourable Member, unfortunately, this is a problem of dealing with numbers without context. Okay? So 9,000 reports, yes. Some of those reports are actually... you had the opportunity to speak. And I think we had mentioned this to the station, that if you're not going to be able to moderate this interview, there is no point in having
Philip.
it. Okay? So now...
You have the floor. You're answering a question. Why are you answering
I don't want an interjection. I don't want an interjection. So what I was saying is this is a problem of having numbers without context, Latif. 9,000 reports. Some of those reports are actually domestic disputes. Mtu amepiga bibi. Okay? So we have to take those off the shelf. Some of them are not falling within our mandate. They go to other institutions. That is why that number goes to half. Okay? And because Mheshimiwa is here and he knows where our budget comes from, he knows what our capabilities are. Even if we have 3,000 reports per year, and EACC has 700, 800 staff, how many investigations can they conclude per year? The normal TOR's investigation manual says 90 days per investigation. Okay? So even if you have all those investigators, it is virtually impossible to investigate 3,000 claims per year. Absolutely impossible. Okay? Now, a lot has been made about the 23 acquittals. People are acquitted even for murder cases. Are you going to change the law on murder? Are you going to change the penal code?
Let's go step by step with what he's saying. Let's not deal with the 3,400 that are relevant to ethics. 1,593 files.
Yes.
Investigations commenced on cases.
Yes.
218 of those are on ethical grounds, fall within the EACC.
Yes.
You forward 234 files to the DPP.
Yes.
Out of the 234 files that you forward to the DPP, this is where now we start getting 78 cases being finalized in that same year.
Okay.
And in that same year of 78 cases finalized, we have 23 acquittals and 1 conviction.
So let's even take those 23 out of 78. Who can do quick maths? What is 23 out of 78? It is exactly a third.
Okay.
Which means a third are acquittals, but the rest are convictions. So we're talking about a conviction rate which is over 60%. I don't know why we are ignoring that fact. That is a significant statistic. We are convicting at a rate of 60%. And mind you, this is in a developing country. In more developed countries, the conviction rates are approaching 90%. Why are they approaching 90% in developed countries? It's because people are engaging in plea agreements. Okay? And that is where we are headed. Sooner or later, we're going to start getting more convictions on the basis of plea agreements. So, again, I said statistics without context. And because Mheshimiwa is here and he has spoken at length about the amendment, the question I have is this. In what way is deleting Section 45, 2B and C going to assist? That is the question, and that is what I think Mbeere should be telling Kenyans.
Okay, so maybe we can establish what does Section 45 2A, B say?
Yeah, as we go to that, as we go to what the section says, we are talking about prosecutions under that section, and the convictions under that section. We are talking only one. Okay. The other conviction may be on other sections, different sections within the EACC or Anti-Corruption and Economic Act. I'm domiciled myself under section 45 2B and 2B and 2C.
Okay.
So, and the report I have.
Sorry, Mheshimiwa, I just wanted to be clear on what that section says that you might have a particular issue with before we go to that report, because that is what now is the grounds for this proposed amendment.
The section says, let me read it verbatively. Allow me to just get it. I don't know why it is.
Philip, do you have it open?
Meanwhile, yes, as Mheshimiwa is getting it, again, he mentioned 5 years. One of the things I'd like to point out, and for Kenyans who have tuned in to understand.
5 years about what?
Yeah, you said you've gone back 5 years. Your report, you've gone back to 2018, which is 5 years ago.
Yes.
In those 5 years, because of the efforts of EACC and other law enforcement agencies, Kenya has managed to improve its position in the Corruption Perception Index from position 144 to position out of 180 to position 123.
And we wanted to be number one.
Yes.
That's why we want to repeal these sections, Ratif, so that corruption can be extremely painful in this country. We don't want to be talking about corruption. We don't want to talk to corruption. We want serious action to be taken. We can't be taxing Kenyans, and then that money goes to waste because people are stealing that money, and they are enabled to steal that money because of the laws which are not efficient, effective. Okay?
Okay.
And, you know...
Sorry, Mheshimiwa, I have to ask
let me
again.
say this.
Sorry, I have to ask again. Because we're still... people are we're waiting for this point. What does it say?
45.
You have an issue with
it. It says... Section 45. There it is.
Can I help you?
Section 45, 2B. I mean 2B, yes, says an officer or a person whose functions concerned the administration, custody, management, receipts, or use of any part of public revenue or public property is guilty of an offense if the person willfully or carelessly fails to comply with any law or applicable procedures and guidelines relating to the procurement, allocation, sale, or disposal of property, tendering of contracts, management of funds, or incurring the expenditure, or C, engages in project without prior planning. Okay. What I'm saying here is that in any statute of law, you cannot start mentioning of with any law. What is any law? You also has to define clearly the meaning of carelessly. you also have to define clearly within the definitions of this act or any other statute of law what prior planning means. These three elements have not been defined in any law.
So your problem with what it says is definitions.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because now, these ones enables lawyers to argue in court of law to ensure people are not convicted. These are the ones which are used in the court of law to ensure people are not convicted. So and a good case, Edu, you can go to Joe Sang case and others of December 2020. They were acquitted because the prosecution could not be able to define what prior planning means.
So if I can take what you've said, just so that we can string them together. You started this by saying that there's a lot of wastage that's going on because of the prosecution of cases and the investigation of cases. That's where you began. With this amendment, with this amendment then, if these issues are clearly defined, then we can say going to court would make sure that convictions come clear and then money would not be wasted. Are we putting the two together and saying one thing will happen as a result of definitions within the Act?
Yes. No, you are absolutely right. And this is what I'm saying. You're absolutely right, Indu. And by the way, he's not the right person to be discussing with me.
Why?
Because he's protecting his job. Me, I protect my job.
Excuse me.
But yes.
That is a very far-fetched allegation which cannot be substantiated.
No, I can.
He works for the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission,
which has seriously failed Kenyans.
Yes, and you work as a member of parliament, an elected member of parliament, in a parliament that, if we were to list the issues we have against, are numerous. So this isn't the forum for you to sort of like eject Mr. Kagucia from the discussion by virtue of the fact that he works for the ethics. We are discussing the issues, not the individual. He's representing ethics and anti-corruption. You are representing a body that is instituted in this country to do certain things. So can we focus on the issues?
Yes.
Can we focus on the issues?
So let's go back to the section 45.2b. Let's go back to 45.2b.
I was just trying to tie a bit with what Du was saying. It is not that we don't have proper laws. We have proper laws. If you go to Public Procurement and Asset Disposal, section 176, on the conduct of the criminal, on the conduct that is criminal. And then you go to the section, the one we have just talked about of EACC. Which talks about the generality of the way what section 45.2b has introduced. The general law must give way to specific law. Law should be specific. Law should be precise. Law should be should not be ambiguous in any way.
I hear you. So your
and
issue,
section 45.2b and c,
your issue is
very ambiguous.
Is on the technicalities and the definitions.
Why should you then criminal people who have stolen money from Kenyans enjoy the loot? Why?
That's very true. Nobody should be enjoying the loot of what they've stolen. I want to ask a question, but please answer it after this break. And this is, are there instances in those 5 years of the research that you and your team have conducted where you can actually point out to the fact that people walked scot-free because of section 45, subsection 2b and 2c?
Yes.
Now, please have those ready. So when you come back out of the break, you start with those ones and tell us, there is this particular case that the EACC investigated, recommended for prosecution, DPP took to court, DPP went through the entire process, and the court said this. And that reason why that criminal is walking scot-free today is because of this particular piece of legislation, and this is why we must amend it so the next time
I have several.
Okay, very good. Our guests, Geoffrey Ruku, Member of Parliament, Mbeere North, and Philip Kagucia, Deputy Director in charge of Asset Recovery at the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission. We're discussing a bill that Mheshimiwa Ruku is sponsoring in Parliament to delete Section 45, 2B and 2C of the Anti-Corruption and Economic Crimes Act. Just quickly, for those who may have missed it, this is a section that talks about protection of public property and revenue, EACC. Section 45(2) talks about an officer or a person whose functions concern the administration, custody, management, receipt, or use of any part of public revenue or public property is guilty of an offense if that person, 2B, willfully or carelessly fails to comply with any law or applicable procedures and guidelines relating to procurement, allocation, sale, or disposal of property, tendering of contracts, management of funds, or incurring expenditure, or Section 2C, if that person engages in a project without prior planning. The EACC is not happy about this proposal to delete this particular section of the law, and Philip Kagucia will tell us why. Mheshimiwa, tell us what cases have gone to court and have been thrown out on account of the ambiguity that you're talking about in this law.
Thank you, Ratif. Case number one, you remember the former managing director of Kenya Pipeline?
Yes.
Was dismissed and taken to court with quite a number of others.
Yes.
They went through the court process. In December 2020, the case was dismissed because the prosecution could not define what prior planning is. And today, Joe Sang is back to his position as the managing director of Kenya Pipeline. Mm-hmm. Two, the Kenya Power and Lighting Company, MD, was also taken to court on the same section. Last year, yes, or early this year, the case was also dismissed. You remember there were some issues on registrar of High Court or Judiciary some years back because of trying to procure a building for the
Court of Appeal
Judiciary.
Judges, yes.
Okay, taken to court, dragged to court for several years. The case was dismissed because they could not be able to get, define some of these.
And this is what the judicial officers said while dismissing or dropping these cases? Did they specifically say, the judicial officers, either magistrate or judge, that one of the reasons why I am acquitting this person?
Let me give you the last one. And actually, I know, let me not say it here. Number two is that Mutua Modosi, the former Director General of Communication Authority of Kenya, was taken to court because there was no prior planning and all this. He was acquitted. Today is a senior person in somewhere in Geneva, and he has gone to court and is demanding 68 million from EACC. So there are many other cases
that have collapsed on account of this.
Yes.
45 2B
yes.
and 2C.
Yes.
I think that if when you invited Mheshimiwa, one of the criteria was cases investigated by EACC. None of those cases is an EACC case. And if he has the evidence, he should table it before the people.
The criteria was not cases investigated by EACC.
Yes.
The criteria is the bill.
Yes.
We've invited him to come and discuss the bill that he has taken to Parliament.
Yes.
Now, your response here, Philip, is particularly for these cases.
Yes.
Are you aware of these acquittals, and are you aware of the judicial officers actually citing the ambiguity in law as part of the reason?
No, I'm not aware. In fact, I think the submissions made by Mahesh are quite surprising. Remember, we are focusing on one or two, a handful of acquittals. Why are we not talking about the bulk of the matters which end up in conviction on the same sections of the same law. And mind you, apart from the fact that people are convicted, we are able to institute civil matters for recovery of that money. And just by way of example, if you look at the billions of shillings that EACC has recovered over the last 5 years, and then you start talking about, and remember, anti-corruption law enforcement, the risk of being sued is an occupational hazard. It is there, it exists there. In fact, it is so prominent that we have a budget for it. We have a budget anticipating that you might actually be sued because somebody says they were taken to court unlawfully. There is a budget for those things because the law enforcement, this is an occupational hazard. And mind you, you've seen recently, we were given a budget increment to about 3.9 billion. It is because we acknowledge that these things happen. In the course of investigations and recommending prosecutions, there is a likelihood that someday someone will turn around and say that they think they were prosecuted unlawfully. Okay?
Mheshimiwa has given us four examples. Mheshimiwa has given us, for example,
acquittals, right? Let's talk about the acquittals, right? The fact that somebody has been acquitted, we do not know for sure that that is the only reason that person was acquitted. The reasons cases collapse in court are multivariate. So, for instance, if you don't get the right witnesses, okay? If witnesses die, if records disappear, and you know public offices tend to spontaneously combust when investigations are ongoing. So there's multivariate reasons why cases may be thrown out. There may be acquittals. Apart from that, just because a case has been thrown out, do we know for sure whether the DPP has instituted an appeal or not? We don't know. These are facts which are not there. And that is why I kept saying, talking about numbers without context is very difficult. Some of these cases we are discussing, an investigation may have started 10 years ago. The case may have gotten to court last year. Context. It is very important. The Anglo leasing cases were investigated in 2006. The suspects were not charged until 2016, and today in 2023, the case is still in court. So in which year would you factor that case? You see, so when you use those numbers the way Mheshimiwa has used them, these are numbers without context. And again, to answer your question, Latif, it is not absolutely certain that the only reason those cases were thrown out is because of Section 45(2)(b). And now because there's a proposal to delete it, what is the alternative? Why are we not being given an alternative? Because Mheshimiwa is saying that the terms are unclear. If this was being done in good faith, what the Honorable Member of Parliament would be telling us is, can we come up with definitions for willful, for negligent, for careless, and for prior planning? That is what we would be discussing.
Can we flip the question and say that, so let us say that these four words then were defined to the point whereby everybody is satisfied. Would that guarantee now these convictions that are being looked for, Philip?
Not absolutely, because the case could actually be thrown out for any other reason. There's a multitude of reasons why a case could have been thrown out. And as I said, I don't feel competent talking about 4 cases which were not involving EACC.
Excuse me, okay? What do you mean that did not involve EACC?
These are not EACC cases. We did not investigate them. He knows that for sure.
Latif.
Yes.
Let me put everything in perspective again. I now want to go to the report of activities of financial statement for the year 2019-2020 for the EACC, because it's a report which are forwarded to Parliament. And allow me also to go through it. I mean, so that you may not say that these numbers are not, I'm just throwing numbers.
No.
I'm not throwing numbers.
I just said the context is important.
For the EACC, in its report of activities for the financial year, or year 2019-2020, indicated that it received and processed 6,021 reports on corruption and unethical conduct during the year 2019-2020 financial year. Out of the received report, 2,225 reports were relevant to EACC mandate, representing that 6.9%. Out of the 2,225 reports recommended for investigation, bribery constituted 34%, embezzlement constituted 23%, procurement irregularity constituted 11%. Latif, I'm not interested in the bribery, embezzlement. Where we are is about the procurement irregularities. Okay?
Yeah.
Because as my brother here said, the alternative is there. And the alternative is 2. One, public procurement and disposal asset of 2015, which is post 2010 constitution, so it is properly aligned with our constitution. And number two, public procurement regulatory authority, which is given investigative powers by the Public Procurement and Disposal Act. And it has real-time data on all the public procurement activities going on in each and every public entity in the Republic of Kenya. Real-time data of all the tender activities going in all public institutions and all ministries. And therefore, it stands a better chance to have value for money if we were to allow public procurement regulatory authority to do investigations and to recommend to authorities. Authorities, one of them being EACC, the other one being CID or police, the other one being employers, the people who are doing the procurement themselves, to recommend to different authorities. So I was in the process of reading this. By the end of the financial 2019-2020, EACC had a total of 620 cases under investigation, out of which 246 were related to ethical breaches. In that period, EACC completed 163 investigations, files on corruption and economic crimes, which were forwarded to DPP for review. How many? 163. So they forwarded to DPP for review. 17 for administrative action and 30 for closure. In the same period, EACC reported 504 pending cases on corruption and economic crimes and unethical conduct pending before the court. Out of the cases, 6 involved in willful failure to comply with the procurement procedures. Okay? How many? 6. During the year 2019-2020 financial year, 87 cases on corruption and economic crimes and unethical conduct were finalized in court, out of which 18 acquittals, 30 withdrawals.
18 acquittals, 30 withdrawals.
Okay. 30 withdrawals and 39 convictions. Okay. EACC procured one conviction, for the willful failure to comply with procurement law and procedures relating to the procurement of the public property, contrary to Section 45(2)(b).
Out of the 6 cases.
Okay.
Exactly.
Okay. Which were arranged before 2019 before the court. Okay. So, in summary, out of the cases which were forwarded for because of this section we are talking about, only one.
What happened to the other 5?
The other were not acquitted. They were not convicted.
So what happened?
There were withdrawals and there were
acquittals and withdrawals.
Okay? So in other words, what I'm saying is, please, let's have law which will make corruption painful in our country. If we follow Public Procurement and Disposal, Asset Disposal Act, and we allow the Public Procurement Regulatory Authority to do investigation because they have real-time data, we'll be able to save a lot of money, taxpayers' money, and ensure we minimize corruption activities in our country.
I want to ask 2 questions to both of you gentlemen. Let me start with you, Philip. What is the role of the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission? What is your mandate?
To combat and prevent corruption through law enforcement, education, public awareness, and promotion of standards and ethics.
Okay.
Yes, and the Anti-Corruption Economic Crimes Act of 2003 was enacted to provide for the prevention, investigation, and punishment of corruption.
Okay.
So when you hear somebody, because it has now come out live on air, that the truth of all this amendment is to take away that function of prevention, investigation and punishment, what Mheshimiwa wants is that function to now go to the PPRA, the Public Procurement Regulatory Authority. It has just come out here. I think it was a Freudian slip, but it has just come out. So you cannot have somebody who...
No, that's what I'm saying.
You cannot have somebody who is now selecting the investigator and at the same time selecting the punishment. That is the long and short of this amendment.
Now, would you say...
That's what the law says.
Mheshimiwa, would you say, Philip, that the laws as we currently have them enable the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission to fulfill this mandate?
Absolutely. That is why we have all these cases in court. And remember, we need to take numbers in context. A case may have been taken to court in 2010. We are in 2023. It may not have been concluded. But if it is concluded this year, it will be counted as an acquittal or a conviction this year. So those numbers have to be taken within the context. So when he says 2019, 2020, that is the year the case was either taken to court or the year it was actually concluded. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, the rest of the time, it's called pending before court, PBC.
These issues that we talk about now, have they ever been raised by the relevant committees of Parliament?
In fact, because this proposal is going to jail, like, am I right, Mheshimiwa? I think this is a proposal to the Justice and Legal Affairs.
It has already been discussed.
Yes. Okay.
Yes.
Before that very same Justice and Legal Affairs Committee are a raft of proposed amendments. And which is why I'm saying, if we were operating on good faith, what the Honourable Member from Mbeere North would have been doing is joining forces with EACC. In fact, this is the first time I've seen us at loggerheads with the legislature about something that we are both agreed upon, that corruption is bad and we are supposed to be fighting it. So if the Honourable Member were coming here in good faith, what we would be doing is looking at the raft of proposed amendments that are lying before the Justice and Legal Affairs Committee and saying, out of these ones, he can support us by pushing some, not by coming to delete some sections of the law, which we have been using to great effect to prosecute cases. And as I said, why are we talking about the acquittals? Why are we not talking about the convictions? And they're there.
I'm just saying one acquittal. I mean one conviction. I'm talking about convictions.
But there are
under
many,
the section.
There are many. You're talking about 1 year, 2018, 2019. You see,
Philip, let me ask you.
Yes.
Has this specific section of the Anti-Corruption and Economic Crimes Act helped you to get convictions?
Absolutely.
How many?
Rephrase. Dozens, and this is what I'm trying to say. If you take 1 year, and in that 1 year there's one conviction, and the previous year there were 3, the previous year there were 2, cumulatively there'll be dozens of convictions on this section. And let me give you a perfect example. When you talk about, let's use counties, okay, because we know there's a problem with corruption in the counties. Okay,
there is a problem with corruption in the counties. Okay,
it's news, right? So we have a huge problem in the counties. But what happens? You have a tender opening committee. You have a tender evaluation committee. You have somebody who prepares a professional opinion. You have somebody who prepares a contract, and you have somebody who pays. Okay,
right?
Because we know corruption is a scheme. We have these people who came up with the scheme in advance. You have to establish the mistake that was made by every stage, within every stage of the procurement process, so that you can reach the person who holds ultimate responsibility. The only difference is because the people who are here in the middle, the technical evaluation committee, you know, they're technical people within the county government.
Yep.
So they're not necessarily high profile, politically exposed persons like the governors, the senators, the members of parliament,
they're
and so on and
officers.
so forth. They're public officers, and they have a responsibility of a public resource.
Okay.
That is why we had this section of the law. So a huge number of convictions. In fact, in my opinion, it's one of the strongest things that we have, because which is the biggest avenue for corruption in Kenya? It's still procurement. And I think on that we're in agreement with. So if you take away the tool that helps EACC to prosecute, to recommend prosecution of those persons, what happens is that you do not strengthen the war against corruption, you actually weaken it.
Mheshimiwa is mentioning the Public Procurement and Disposal Act.
Yes.
Can you not use that act?
So again, to clarify, these things, there's something called an anti-corruption legal framework. It is a framework. And I think in a previous interview when you were talking with Mheshimiwa, he said it's like a body. You know, this part works with this part, okay? And what the Anti-Corruption Economic Crimes Act says, willful or careless failure to comply with that Public Procurement and Asset Disposal Act gives rise to an offence. So it is connected. There is no inconsistency.
Latif, researchers at the Parliament have done a good job. And we are very serious guys in Parliament, extremely serious and very well trained.
Hard-working public officers.
Yes. And, my brother here is talking about huge convictions, Let me put into perspective. 2018, 2019, conviction under Section 45(2) was 1. 2019, 2020, conviction under the same section was 1. 2020, 2021, conviction under the same section were 2. 2021, 2022, conviction under the same section were 2. From 2018 to 2022, total number 6. Okay? I would want my brother to challenge those facts. Let him come to the next session.
No, not next session. I'm right here, right
with
now.
different.
Our time is up. Right now, our time is up. But quickly,
just to summarize
yes.
again, it is one conviction out of how many? Because if it is one conviction out of one case recommended for prosecution that year, that success rate is 100% for that year.
I can also
no
put
year where you've only recommended one.
Absolutely.
On average, you recommend, like I've just looked, over 100.
Yes,
but how many of those are under Section 45(2)(b? So that we can say the ones that are out of 45(2)(b, if there is an acquittal, it is this number. If it is a conviction, it is this number. Again, numbers without context.
Again,
I mentioned
of all the files that you take to court, the ones that are under this particular section are a small percentage. Look, 116 cases taken to court, 6 are under this particular section.
Yes.
1 conviction, 5 either acquitted or withdrawn.
No. Ongoing, pending before court. The cases are ongoing. That is why.
No. Please.
And
let's be honest.
How many have been thrown out? Let us be honest. How many have been thrown out?
I have been referring to numbers here of withdrawals, of convictions and acquittals, isn't it?
Yes.
I was clear about that, but he's trying to go around, there's no need. What generally we are saying is that we need to provide to the laws and to public servants laws which are in tandem with our constitution so that we can be able to make corruption painful in our country.
To make his work easier.
Yes, number two, Ratif. As we wrap up, number 2 is that we have law in place. We have Public Procurement and Asset Disposal Act in place. We have Public Procurement Regulatory Authority in place.
Which these two are connected. They don't work independent of each other already.
You see, Public Procurement and Regulatory Authority have investigative powers. It is in law. Just as EACC have investigating powers. Just as CID, they have investigating powers. Just as Capital Market Authority has investigating powers.
So you're saying
it's not one body. It's not one body. It's not one body which has investigating powers in this country. We only say it is high time, because the EACC has been there for 20 years, to ask ourselves, has EACC served Kenyans in the most appropriate way?
Oh, so this
can we be able to? Can we be able?
I think I'm glad the truth has come out. It has nothing to do with 45(2)(b).
Can we be able to strengthen, our corruption fighting processes so that we make crime painful? Because we want to change this country in another 10 years. We can't be having slums every corner of this world. Of this country.
Can we have this gentleman come again?
We should.
And under an hour where they can actually debate this.
We'll do it for 2 hours.
And ask the public to also come in.
Because it's a very important one. So for 2 hours, education, and then let's get feedback from the public.
But I'm glad the truth has come out. It has nothing to do with 45(2)(b). It's now about taking that power to someone else.
Which has been 45(2)(b) and C, which has enabled Kenyans to lose money.
Okay.
We have to delete that. And we have to ensure the procurement-related issues are investigated by proper equipped body. And that is Public Procurement Regulatory Authority.
Because those ones are better equipped to handle corruption.
Yes. Procurement related, not corruption.
You see, now it has come out. At least it has come out. Now we are clear. The issue is not the section. Yes.
Let's release this fine.
The issue is the section.
Thank you very much.
Which has made Kenya lose a lot of money.
Thank you for joining us today. I will welcome you again for two proper hours with public engagement on this.
Thank you.
Asanteni sana.
Spice.